Okay, what if I told you that one of the most exciting, absolute cutting-edge ideas in modern physics might actually make you, well, unkillable? Like, according to the actual math, you might be literally impossible to delete out of existence. Welcome to The Explainer, where today we are diving into a concept so mind-bending it feels like science fiction, but it's very much grounded in real science. To really test this incredible, unbelievable idea, we're going to have to set up the ultimate high-stakes thought experiment. Picture this. We are going to put a live, fully armed nuclear bomb right in the middle of your living room. Why? Just to push the absolute boundaries of reality itself and see what happens.
All right, hold on. Before we literally hit the detonator here, we need to understand that this isn't just some wild fantasy we made up. This entire thought experiment is deeply rooted in the rigorous science happening in labs right now. We're talking about the story of the absolute smallest parts of our universe, atoms and fundamental particles. And in this microscopic, deeply weird quantum realm, randomness isn't just a glitch, it is the absolute rule.
Think about the everyday world we're used to for a second. If you kick a perfectly predictable marble 10 times with the exact same force, at the exact same angle, it's going to land in the exact same spot every single time. It just makes sense, right? But if you were to kick a quantum particle, let's say a random shape-shifting electron, exactly the same way 10 times, it shows up in 10 completely different places. There's no predictability to it at all.
Okay, let's dive into this. To actually make sense of this shape-shifting electron, physicists use something called a probability wave. Now, don't picture a physical wave of water or a sound wave. This is basically an immaterial essence that holds values anywhere between 0 and 100%. It doesn't tell us what the electron looks like, it doesn't tell us how it moves, it just tells us how that particle is going to behave on average. And I know, as bizarre and invisible as this concept is, it's the exact same math that accurately powers the microchips in your phone and explains how atoms fuse in the center of stars. It's real. So let's say you've got an electron gun, and you fire it into your apartment 100 times. The math dictates this strict, proven probability split. 80 times, the electron shows up in your living room. 20 times, it shows up in your kitchen. That means the probability wave of our electron is definitively, mathematically, 80% in the living room and 20% in the kitchen.
But here is the million-dollar question. What does this mathematical story actually mean for reality? I mean, scientists have literally been screaming and arguing over this exact question for a century. And broadly speaking, there are two main factions going head-to-head here. You've got the linguists on one side and the literary critics on the other.
First up, the linguists. They take a very strict, incredibly no-nonsense position. Their motto? Shut up and calculate. Seriously, they believe quantum mechanics isn't a story about reality at all. It's just a grammar for the theoretical language of the universe. To them, we use this language to predict the outcomes of experiments, and that's it. Stop trying to visualize electrons as tiny marbles or fluffy clouds or, Detective Pikachu. Physics is about experiments. Just follow the grammar and completely ignore the plot. But then you have the literary critics, and they completely disagree. They scream right back, "No, read between the lines. There's a hidden meaning here." These are the folks we call the many-worldians. They're absolutely convinced that the math reveals a literal, physical story about reality, one where all physically possible outcomes coexist simultaneously. So to them, it's not just a probability representing what might happen. No, everything that can happen actually does happen in reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how that 80-20 probability translates into literal reality for the literary critics. If the probability wave is split 80-20%, they argue the electron itself actually splits. There are literally 5 real versions of the electron. 4 go to the living room and 1 goes to the kitchen. But wait, it gets crazier. Because you are the one observing the electron, you split too. You branch into 5 equally real versions of yourself. 4 of you see the living room electron, and 1 of you sees the kitchen electron.
And this right here leads us to the breathtaking concept of the branching universe. Every single possible quantum process creates new, real, possible worlds. Let's say a radioactive atom decays. Well, another world exists right beside it where it didn't decay. If a stray cosmic ray hits one of your cells, another world branches off where the ray passed harmlessly through. Which means, if you think about it, every single second, bazillions upon bazillions of new worlds are branching off, existing right here, right now. They are perfectly real, but totally invisible and completely inaccessible to each other. Naturally, the linguists immediately push back against this wild idea. They're shouting, "Look, if these worlds can't interact with each other, we can't possibly check whether they exist. This isn't science." And honestly, it's a completely fair point. If a universe is invisible and totally untestable, how's it any different from a fairy tale? Which brings us exactly back to our terrifying fatal test.
Because what if I told you there actually is a way to find out which side is right, but it requires walking step by step through the absurd and deadly setup of what we'll call the ultimate experiment? Okay, step 1, we connect 2 electron detectors to a nuclear bomb right in your living room. Step 2, you sit directly on the nuke. Step 3, your incredibly brave assistant shoots the electron gun into the room.
Just think about the absolutely insane life-or-death stakes for a single pull of that trigger. Based on our probability wave from earlier, there's an 80% chance the electron lands in the living room detector and triggers an instant nuclear explosion. There's only a 20% chance it lands in the kitchen detector and you remain safe. You are quite literally sitting on a bomb, trusting your entire existence to the quantum dice.
So the crucial point is, what happens next? Well, if there's only a single universe, like the linguists say, you pull the trigger a few times and boom, you die instantly. But if the many worlds theory is right, then every time that gun fires, you split into 5 versions. 4 versions of you die instantly in a nuclear blast, but 1 version survives. And because you can only experience the universe where your consciousness is still active, from your own perspective, you are literally guaranteed to survive every single time.
Now imagine doing this experiment 100 times in a row. Beep, beep, beep. If there is only one universe, your odds of naturally surviving 100 shots are astronomically low. We are talking about 1 in 10 duogentillion. That is a 1 followed by 70 zeros. To put that into perspective, that is just completely statistically impossible.
But what if you open your eyes and you are still sitting there after 100 shots? That is the climax of our experiment right there. The cosmic secret. If you survive 100 times, the universe just whispered its deepest, darkest secret directly to you. It proves many worlds is absolutely true. Now yes, you have technically killed hundreds of versions of yourself in other branches, but the you experiencing the survival right now, that you knows for a fact that you are, mathematically speaking, immortal.
Like taking this out of the living room, this has some absolutely wild, everyday implications. If many worlds is true, it means there is always an always lucky branch for you. Imagine a fatal tumor starts, but a stray cosmic ray kills it before it spreads. Or a lightning bolt strikes at you, but a quantum fluke makes it miss by just a single meter. Or my favorite, a falling washing machine drops from a roof, but all of its atoms literally quantum tunnel entirely through your body, leaving you completely unharmed. No matter how high the likelihood of death is, there is always a branch of reality where a quantum fluke steps in and saves your life.
But, and this is a massive but, here is the catch. I have to warn you, please do not go out and start wingsuit flying or testing your luck with extreme sports to prove this. Because for every single version of you that miraculously survives, bazillions of other versions of you don't. They meet a very real, very terrible end. And according to the math, those other dead versions of you are just as real and just as important as the version of you sitting there breathing right now.
There's this famous saying that goes along with this theory. If you see a washing machine falling, better move away and save as many of your versions as you can. Seriously, the more universes that exist with you in them, the better. Your existence makes the entire universe richer. So you should care deeply about protecting all your potential versions and all the loved ones they interact with in those countless invisible branches. All right, we do need to bring this back down to reality for a second. Because as beautiful and as mathematically elegant as the many worlds interpretation is, it firmly remains the great unknown. No scientist has actually sat on a nuke yet to risk proving it, and for good reason. The linguists might be completely 100% right. We might only have one single fragile world, just one version of you. And if that falling washing machine hits you in this universe, you are entirely done for. So that leaves us with one pretty profound thought to consider as we wrap up this explainer. If you can never truly know all the unseen quantum versions of yourself, how will you protect the one you are right now? It's kind of a striking reminder, isn't it, of the immense value of making the absolute most out of our single known existence, even while gazing out at the unseen realities that might just be branching off us every single second. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning reality.